Having promoted keto diet, specifically keto-green diet, since really 2014 in my own health journey, when I was at the age of 48, cycling through like full-blown perimenopause symptoms. I mean, the hot flashes, mood swings, inability to sleep. Combine that with PTSD, which really aggravated this. I discovered through my own work when I started gaining 20 pounds overnight without doing anything different. I'm going to put air quotes there, without doing anything different, because that is true. I used to hear that from patients all the time, and I'd be very skeptical. I'm like, sure, you're not doing anything different. Sure, you're not. Maybe there's a Snickers bar in your purse or something like that, but for sure, I wasn't doing anything different, and that weight started creeping up. So in 2014, that really took me on a journey deep into, okay, what shifted? Here I am, a menopause hormone expert. I reversed menopause once in my life from age 30, at age 39, when I was diagnosed with early menopause, reversed that. And now at age 48, was feeling these full-blown symptoms. So that took me to discover what I call my keto-green approach. So if you guys have read my book, The Hormone Fix, or keto-green 16, you will hear more of that story. And certainly in my program, Magic Menopause, I go into it in more detail. And so I discovered the keto green approach, and I started using it, and I was able to get off my thyroid medicine. I lost 20 pounds, well, 18 pounds in six weeks. That, was just unbelievable. And so all of these changes really empowered me to then bring online my Magic Menopause program, which I use. It's an 8-week program. It's for you guys to enjoy and learn and feel empowered. And that is the biggest blessing. Knowledge is power, and understanding what is your next right step is, and having the science and the information behind you is really powerful. I know that. So keto, though, has had lots of controversy. Now there's been, like over the centuries, the Atkins diet, if you remember the Atkins diet in the 80s, like I do, that's one of the original keto diets, right? And then from there, carnivore diets is a ketogenic diet. But what's a healthy way for women, especially midlife or entering the second 50 of their life? What's the best way for women to approach the keto diet? And so there has been controversy, and I've had clients in my Magic Menopause program say, oh, my doctor advises against a ketogenic diet. And there are many issues that have come up. Like one is, oh, it's not good for your hormones. It's going to raise your cortisol. Well, we're going to talk about that. And again, a keto green diet is different from a keto diet. So you guys know as I share this and in my programs, you'll see a different way to do keto in a healthy way designed for women, especially women over 50. But another concern has been bone health. Well, critics have worried that the keto diet will contribute to bone health issues. And it's, again, absolutely not true. And cardiovascular health. Then you have your cardiologist. Some are full on. Let's do keto or keto green diets, fertility issues. Let's do keto green diets. But yet there are opponents. And another area, fourth area, is impact on thyroid health. The questions, oh, well, does it adversely affect our thyroid? And then a fifth area is nutritional deficiencies. Well, keto diet, you're not getting enough nutrition. Well, certainly if you're just eating bacon and eggs and cheese, you're missing out on some really good stuff. And fiber is key to healthy hormones and healthy aging. And so, so that's another consideration, as well as sustainability. Well, how long can you do this? And that's often also where I introduced my 10-80-10 rule: 10% fasting, 80% keto green, 10% feasting. We want to incorporate all those aspects into our life. So today I'm bringing on an internal medicine physician who is well known in the keto space. And she is just an inspirational, powerful woman as well. She is a doctor of internal medicine, a author, a mother, a wife, a teacher, and a storyteller. This is Dr. Annette Bosworth, known as Dr. Boz. She was born into a farming family in rural South Dakota, and she inherited hard work and the expectation that all things are teachable. So throughout her medical training and career, she applied her inheritance to teach patients through storytelling and practical application of medical jargon. She's well known on the media. She has been a professor at the University of Utah and University of South Dakota School of Medicine. She's been featured on CNN, Time, US News and World Report, Fox News, and more. She's written a best-selling book, Any Way You Can, as well as the book Keto Continuum. So join me in welcoming Dr. Boz to the Girlfriend Doctor Show. Well, welcome, Dr. Boz, to the Girlfriend Doctor Show. It is great to have you here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I feel honored to be on your show.
Well, gosh, I've been trying to get you on for a while now, since
No,
KetoCon, I think 2023 or something. So
right. We met on
it's been a
stage. It was like, oh, another person doing this. And then the swarm of people and then the swarm of life, right?
Right, right. It's like, okay, great to have other physicians in this space, and and to hear the an internal medicine physician to really go into this and say, well, this is how I'm using it. So I'd love for you to share with my audience your story of how you really started implementing the keto diet into your medical practice and what you saw initially.
Well, I'll start by saying I think I might have been predestined. I was supposed to end up here. I'm from a dynasty of hog farmers. So if you're going to be in the ketogenic space where, fatty meat is part of the staple, come from a dynasty of hog farmers. As I looked at my career, though, I all I cared about when I was going through school was to never end up as a farmer's wife back on that little town in the middle of nowhere that was for sure the worst place in the world. And now, of course, I spend every ounce of energy connecting to that, going back to that. But at the time, it was where I needed to get away from, and the only way out I could find was to study hard. So as I end up in the world of medicine, really all of my vaccinations as a kid came from the county nurse. I think I'd seen a doctor once or twice. Not as a child, just like, you need a physical, there's one coming to town, you should go get this so you can have something. So yeah, very little exposure to the medical world. And I was in this steep education that, of course, I would share it with my family. And I found that as I would answer questions of my family, where I had just mockingbird the answer from the teachers, from the attendings, that when I repeated the stuff from the internal medicine doctor, my parents leaned in, and I felt rewarded. Like, oh, that's the level of, I felt better too. Like I could get to the depth of the answer more when those questions were there. And then I get into residency and I head off there, and I find myself in the second year of residency, where an old internist with a bow tie and the full suit on Saturday morning, and I am bouncing. I am post call. I can't wait to leave. And he says the most appropriate thing to me, which is, "You have far too much personality for an internist." And I thought,
What a big compliment.
yes. I'm like, oh, yeah, they're not exactly like me. Most internists. I love the job. I love what I've been blessed with. I originally attracted to critical care and a very analytical approach to solving problems, answering questions, but really found that the life of being a mother while being a physician meant something had to give. And I have no regrets that I chose the outpatient internal medicine world where I, record on an electronic medical record after I get home, because it allowed me the time to be a mom. And I love the job. I also love the best identity, which is to be part of my family and the mother of my family, of my children and my unit. That being said, as I navigated through medicine, my first couple of jobs were with corporate medicine, and I'm from a small town, 800 people. Everybody in a small town, and that connection to community is really, it's important. It's burdensome in some ways. Like, I can tell you, when the preacher was sleeping with the neighbor's wife, this is a small town USA. Like, they're sinful, and that happens. But it was the quality that it was raw. This is a real relation. This is the real people. They're not fake. The good and bad, they're real.
Mhm.
And as I was navigating through corporate medicine, I couldn't help but say there's got to be more intimacy in what happens between a doctor and a patient. And when I see a solution, this should be easy to do. So I find myself in my second major job in corporate medicine, and I hate it. I hate what's happened. I feel suffocated that every time I go to solve a problem, if it's not four administrators telling me that's against the rules, when it's not against the rules, it's against their rules. No, I do not need to see the patient to refill her thyroid. She's had it refilled for the last 10 years. It's the same thing. I checked her labs. The labs are normal. I don't need to see her to fill that. But those are the kinds of rules that don't waste my time seeing a patient for the refill of thyroid just because it doesn't fit in her world or my world, but it's required in your corporate world that she needs to come in right now. No, that's not necessary. So I pushed back against a lot of those areas, but found myself that the best place was probably going to be not in corporate medicine, in my own clinic. And that's a lot. I had a non-compete. So I first served in the shelters of my community, seeing Medicaid and seeing teenagers who needed an internist, and really working with the School of Medicine and taking med students to Haiti as part of a mission trip as I found my way through those first 2 years. But what happened is I woke up. I found I could make a lot less money, but I could find that connection of real intimacy in understanding my patients better. And then I had this really stubborn patient, who probably the most stubborn patient I'd ever taken care of, 71 years old, comes in to see me 10 years into her cancer treatment. She's been through 2 rounds of chemo. The last time was not fun. She really got hit hard with that round of chemo. And as she walks through the door, you do not have to be a doctor to know this is not a healthy looking person. She kind of looks like a zombie. She's gray. You can see she's got CLL, so it's a lymphocytic leukemia, and she's got some big nodes across the room you can see. And sure enough, the oncologist agreed she needs chemo. And she said, "I'd rather die." The last time you did that, she's a seamstress. I didn't know what a sewing machine was for 6 months. And I'm not doing that again. I'd rather die. And at this moment, I've been in a really big turmoil personally, where I was trying to get these peak outcomes for brain injury. As an internist, that was what my clinic outside of corporate medicine really focused on. How do I get peak brain performance in a Parkinson's patient, in somebody with bipolar, in somebody who's been addicted to alcohol, traumatic brain injury? And there's a part of medicine, I'm doing a lot of things right and great, and I feel proud of it, but there's this area that I did not know anything about, called a ketogenic diet, that was repairing brains faster than, it was amazing. And I knew nothing about it. So I had been spending my off time of how do I learn more about this? And this patient is standing in front of me and said, ask a question that I think, well, I'm sure you've been asked this, and I'd like to tell people that I always tell them the truth, but sometimes I lie when they ask me this question. And it's, "Doc, if it was you, what would you do?"
Mhm. Mhm.
And those first dozen years in corporate medicine, you learn to say, this is what the guidelines say. Don't be too intimate. It's going to take too much time to tell you what I would do. And then I'll be behind, and then somebody's going to yell and get upset. And the person asking the question was my mom.
Wow.
And I said, "Mom, do you trust me?" And of course, she gets emotional and says, "With my whole life." That's a very dangerous place to be as a smarty pants daughter who is, madly in love with my mom. And here she is saying 6 months to live if we do nothing. And the chemo, I didn't have a bought and pair of jeans until the 6th grade because she sewed them all. And she didn't know what a sewing machine was that first go around. And now I said, Mom, I've been reading about a ketogenic diet. And I think instead of walking down that hallway and getting chemotherapy for the 3rd time, for which we know what will happen, I think you should let me do 6 weeks of a ketogenic diet. It's going to be hard, but I'll do it with you." And we got in the car and we drove to my farm 100 miles from that hospital, cleaned out every carbohydrate, did the messiest version of a ketogenic diet I've ever done. But 6 weeks later, we end up back in that oncology office where they were looking for where the chemo is. Rural South Dakota, you get chemo done somewhere else, right? Where's the chemo report? Where's the chemo report? Because the labs had come back where chemo would have stopped it from growing. It wouldn't have doubled. It would only increase by 25 or 50%. But we had no space in our brain where a ketogenic diet could reverse the cancer by 70% in 6 weeks. It
Wow.
blew my mind.
70% reduction in 6 weeks.
Yeah, that was not anywhere on the predictions for what the chemo would have done.
Yeah.
And that's how I landed in this place. So I wrote a book about that. I lost a bet to my husband, self-published a book. It's been sold over 1 million copies, called Any Way You Can. And it's really this love story between me and my mom. It's kind of a snarky book, but it's truly this journey of what did I learn when I had to mass study a ketogenic diet in a cancer patient that had a timer.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's a great
And then
book.
what happened from there, Annette? How was your mom or,
Yeah, so Grandma Rose did amazing. She was able to not only reverse that CLL to a trickle. Like CLL, it replicates. It's got a chain that's going to divide, but it's got like when the story first starts, she's got 1 in 5,000 white blood cells that's not deformed. And by 7 months into this story, we had, a 1 in, I mean, that you would only find 1 or 2 defective cells out of 1,000.
wow.
So very, very tiny amount that you could find in the circulation. And she was great. Not only did that happen, but her brain fog that had kind of sucked out her personality, that returned. Her thyroid returned to normal. Her weight lost. I mean, she was, back to 126 pounds, and the story starts, she's 180 pounds. And um, that weight loss wasn't what we were doing it for, but that was when you're pushing the body to really fuel on fat. Not only do these anti-inflammatory problems really suppress, things that on my boards, this is not reversible. You must take medications for the rest of your life. There's no way out. That's the right answer. That's what you get points for. I'm telling you, that's not what happened. And I have, Mom was the first of many patients then who came to say, is this reversible? And I'm always careful to say, I've seen a lot of it. It is going to depend on you. But and her recovery inspired so many people to say it's not a substitute for Western medicine, but it is the best augmentation to say don't let him kill you with Western medicine.
Right, right. Well, and our Hippocratic Oath says using food and medicine for, food as medicine first, food and lifestyle.
Amen.
So
Mm.
nutrition and lifestyle, and that's in our Hippocratic Oath. It's since been changed, but the original Hippocratic Oath, had
Well,
that in it. So then you helped your mom and you became on fire to implement this nutrition aspect, right? This
oh,
nutrition aspect into your practice, into your internal medicine practice.
yeah. One of the best parts about what had prepared me probably for the best use of a ketogenic diet is this brain health stuff. And yes, Parkinson's, bipolar, migraines, lots of places patients come from, but the most common was addiction. And when people had, given up their addiction, their brains were not at peak performance unless we helped them, really figure out how to repair that brain. And I had an EMR that I could study myself and look back on patients. What makes them better? Why would somebody stay sober? Why did they, graduate from my practice? What's the trick? Is it this prescription? Is it this therapist? What's the key? And the number one best predictor for somebody to reverse an addiction was, did they show up to the support group?
Mhm,
Uh,
mhm.
and as I look at people trying to change a behavior of a lifetime where they've been told it's okay to eat Doritos as your side, it's okay to eat processed food, that's just normal, and to really push that away and say, what if you just ate sardines for the whole week? What if you just ate steak for the whole week? I mean, their brains are like, huh? And at first it sounds great in this, steak and butter, that sounds awesome. And then they realize they might be eating for different reasons. And it's in this addiction to food that I've just found the lane is wide. There's not a lot of people walking in this lane. And if you really look at people's ability to stay in a nutritional choice of eating, they got to deal with some demons.
They're going to deal with some
And
demons. Now, when you're talking about addiction, like to recover from addiction, are you also, uh, you know, including alcohol addiction, drug addiction, and that getting into following more of a ketogenic? I mean, I always say the keto, for me, it's keto-green, right? So the keto-green combination, that, that it is willpower is physiologic. So that's a very powerful physiology. And so that
Mhm.
clarity. So you're saying also in drug addiction, alcohol addiction?
Oh, absolutely. So again, when we look at how that the impact of, let's just take alcohol. Alcohol helps you with that relaxed dissociation because it swells part of the brain. It crosses the blood-brain barrier. Alcohol pulls water with it, and it swells that brain cell. It looks very similar to a concussion, except that alcohol goes everywhere, and a concussion is more localized. And when you watch what happens over time when someone's been using alcohol and then they say, hey, I want to not do that anymore. And they work on not drinking, their brain has a lot of repair to do.
Mhm.
And what I've noticed is that, yeah, I can help you stay in the lane. I can tell you how your brain's going to heal. But as soon as you say, but I want to comfort myself, and my favorite comfort is scotch, a scotch and ice. Whereas the next person says, my favorite is cherry nut ice cream. I don't care which of those external sources you're getting when they're abused as the place for comfort. Well, first of all, they both they enhance the inflammation at a cellular level in the brain, and they stop the healing. And to back up the steps, the thoughts, where did you get there? It isn't that, oh, just take alcohol away from them. Oh, just take the ice cream away from them. It is, you need a different way to comfort yourself. You've been taught that this is the answer, and you've been practicing it for so long that it seems like it's the only option. But when we look at not only the fastest way to get these Navy SEALs that I was telling, these brain injuries for Navy SEALs, for NASA teammates, they were using all the fancy stuff I was using, plus a ketogenic diet, an advanced ketogenic diet. And they were kicking my butt as far as the amount of time it took for their brains to look normal on scans. I'm
Mhm.
like, it takes me 18 months to get that result. You're telling me you can get there in 6 months if I put the patient in an advanced ketogenic state? It blew my mind. And it's been powerfully important for, how do you reverse this? How do you give them their life back?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that too. And then so with that, like look, thinking back to addiction, because this is powerful. So you work to get them in keto state, and then through like how do you get them to choose a different comfort?
Yeah.
Break that
Well,
pattern.
right. So I don't know that they cover this so much in medical school, but they cover the tar out of it in alcohol addiction. When
AA, right.
that's where
12
the most,
steps
yeah, that's
and
where the most education I think is. And you'll have people say, I never want to go there. I went that, I tried that once. And when you look at the core of what's being taught in those community groups is look at somebody who activates your mirror neuron. Very special neurons inside our brain, and primates learn by watching. So I can remember the first time I learned something from my husband as an adult. We have kids together. We're learning how to live. We don't have kids at this time, but during the story, he comes from his family. I come from my family, and we have learned things by watching our families. The way we learned that was mirror neurons. As you get into that adulthood, and you'll know you're there when you get into a relationship where you're like, what are you doing? I've never seen someone do that. So my husband and I are both firstborns, which means we're going to be intense. So we're in the midst of a foreplay. We're arguing. We are bitching at each other, chirp, chirp, chirp. I'm right, he's right, and we're arguing. And it's in the heat of an argument where he says, "You're right, I'm wrong." And I still get goosebumps to this day because I can remember the moment so profoundly. I had never seen someone do that in an argument. My
wow.
brain just learned something it never learned before. That's what mirror neurons do. I learned there was a different choice inside that argument, not because somebody told me, but because I saw someone do it. And it was out of my world, like, huh? And it's taken a lot, even to this day, when I'm in a heated argument, and I want to win, I'm competitive, I want to be, I think of him. I think of the moment where I learned it. And when you look at those behaviors of people choosing different choices that their parents did not show them, that their childhood or teenage latchkey didn't have the imprinting to say, this is what health looks like. This is why that's important. No one showed them that. And now you're an adult. So guess what? Your learning is influenced by those people you're watching. And
Mhm.
if I try to write your prescription behind an exam room door and say, do this, we're not going to get anywhere. But if I put you in a group of other people that have suffered like you've suffered, that have gone through this, and they tell you their story, or you see them screw up and forgive themselves. Amazing how many people have never seen the grace of God in the moment. They've never seen it. And when they watch somebody say, I screwed up and I drank last night, but I'm here at group because I know that's not the right path. It's like, it's mind blowing. And you can't like pensively put that in someone's brain. Another human has to show them. And I really think that again, I was destined to be in the lane I'm in right now, because in a small town USA, when you do sleep with the preacher and then you go to church the next week, it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I learned not to run away. When you've screwed it up, just keep showing up in life and try again. And I just think those are real relationships. Those are the intimate moments where you say, you know what? I want to do it like you.
Mhm.
And you
Mhm.
can't say that if you've never seen it.
And I always say, there is healing in community. There is so much healing in community. And when we look at the blue zones, right, community is a big aspect of longevity. When you're in community, people care about you. Like you said, like we know, as you grew up in a small town, I grew up in a small town, but it's like, people are flawed. And so you can accept sometimes the flaws within yourself. Now, I've just come to that realization not too long ago. Try to be perfect for long enough, it can really burn you out. That took me into early perimenopause too, for sure. But
Oh,
so,
well, welcome to med school. Isn't the whole
right,
class filled with people that are trying to do that?
we're all perfect, right? We're all being
Absolutely.
perfect. All right, I want to thank you first of all for sharing that, for sharing your stories and for sharing your journey, and also, how it's really impacted your practice and your clients. And I want to talk about some of the like rapid fire questions. Here are some of the things that people say, well, or physicians or the public media or people are hearing when they say, hey, I'm doing keto diet or keto green diet. Oh, well, you shouldn't do it because, okay, it'll affect your hormones. It'll increase cortisol and mess up your thyroid. Dr. Boz?
Yeah, no, it will not do that. Again, your approach to changing behavior is going to stress you out. Yes, that's going to raise cortisol, but that's not what the cortisol was elevated for in the first place. When I look at the crash course of, I didn't know the thyroid could be that resilient. It has all been in the aftermath of saying, we're going to put you on a ketogenic diet. We're going to make a rule right now. We're not going to change a thing about your thyroid medication for at least 4 months. What you're on right now or what you're not on right now is not going to kill you in 4 months, but we are going to learn what's your thyroid capable of. And I'll tell you, Anna, it's been, again, the textbooks don't tell you this, that just give that thyroid time. Watch what it can do. And I know there's 50 ways you can check the thyroid and look inside and outside and reverse and you're like, just pause. It's a responsive endocrine hormone. And when it is in a soup of inflammation, it does goofy things. It sometimes gets the brunt of an autoimmune destruction that it can't resurrect from. But more importantly, it is a vital part of your throttle. And when you've been in that brain fog, high stress, low sleep, and you've been asking the thyroid to just carry the team, it doesn't do very well for a long time. I mean, it'll do well for a short time, but not for the long game. When I put my patients on a ketogenic diet, and this isn't fake keto, they have to prick their finger in the morning, show me ketones. You are not on a ketogenic diet if there's not ketones in circulation.
That's
And it
right.
is that chemical state that you can see this the soft awakening of a thyroid. Not always, not all of them, but I give it a chance. What I am super frustrated with when patients come to me saying, in the last 2 years, I have had 8 approaches to my thyroid. And I'm like, your thyroid's still stuck on the second one. It doesn't respond that quickly. It's an endocrine responsive hormone. Slow down the changes and watch what happens. And I contend starting with a change that puts a patient in a ketogenic state is how you can, so sponge out the inflammation that's been really crippling the impact that thyroid has in production, but also has on the end organs, your body.
Right, right. And two, in clinic, I've only seen improvements in thyroid gland as well. Just give it time because again, anti-inflammatory and really hormone balancing. You don't get the spikes, the peaks and glucose
Oh,
and
yeah.
insulin. I mean, it's really hormone balancing. So yes, that is a myth, ladies and gentlemen. The next one that you'll hear is that, oh, it can cause osteoporosis because you're not getting enough calcium and vitamin D.
Well, I will tell you that calcium mineralization really is best done when the hormones, which are some fat-based hormones, specifically estrogen, are doing its best job. You want to see bones improve. The number one lever that every physician in the know that's going to pull or push on is that estrogen response in bones. That yes, calcium is part of the equation, but you get plenty of calcium from eating healthy food. You also have the remarkable improvement in nutrient extraction of your food into your body. That's digestion and absorption, extraction of that nutrient into the body when you're not eating all that junk, when there's not that inflammation at the gut lining. When I look at some of the most disastrous you know destruction of bones, it comes with I put you on steroids because of your rheumatoid arthritis. 15 years later, your spine is now crumpled. I mean, I've had patients where the bottom rib crunched onto their hips. They're
Ugh,
just so collapsed because that's not a calcium deficiency. That is a tensile structural deficiency that plummets when estrogen isn't present. And if you want to see estrogen be trapped in the wrong spot, specifically trapped inside a fat cell, well, then live with really high insulin. I
yeah,
mean, what is the core hormone that we are reducing on a ketogenic diet? We are reducing insulin.
yeah.
Insulin is the dictator of fat and fat-based hormones. Those cholesterol-based hormones, including the estradiols of your body, have suffocation inside your fat cells when you keep your insulin 5 times higher than it should be. And when you lower it and offer that, yeah, I can give you estrogen by, replacement, but guess what? You got a whole bunch of that stored in your fat cells. When we start to reduce that, amount of insulin, you'll often hear these younger women or what perimenopausal women say, "Hey doc, I'm bleeding again. What's wrong with it? What's up with that?" I'm like, "Oh, you're just emptying a few storage buckets. Just stay the course. We'll check things in a few months."
Oh,
Because it really does have a shift. So when I look at the osteoporosis stuff, I just think they do not understand how bones age, heal, or strengthen. You're missing the point.
right, right, 100%. And then where estrogen helps with bone loss, progesterone, testosterone, and DHEA improve bone growth and remodeling. So it all
All
comes
all
into
fat based, absolutely.
yeah. And so, okay, the third one, which is really a hot topic. Oh, well, keto is going to increase cardiovascular disease and raise your cholesterol.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
you've done, okay, you guys, Dr. Boz has her YouTube channel at Dr. Boz. So check that out. And she's just done an incredible segment on understanding your lipids. So yeah,
yeah.
let's dive into this a little bit
Well, I'll
because
tell you that one of the advantages to going to that YouTube channel is that I have slides. I have gorgeous slides to say, here's what we're really talking about. And when you look at the impact that patients that we have for metrics I can study in a patient that teach me, are they going to die of a heart attack? Are they going to die of a heart attack? It's not that LDL or your bad cholesterol doesn't make the list. It just makes the list by a tiny little insy bincy little moment at the bottom. It's so minor that I say, quit focusing on, I mean, the big picture is at the top of that list. And at the top of that list, the most powerful thing that we can do to improve your risk of heart disease is reduce that insulin resistance. When insulin has been made in excess, which means you're probably eating more than 2 meals a day, you're probably eating more carbohydrates than 30 grams per day, and you have been for a decade. That churn of higher and higher and higher insulin created the soup that will create heart disease. And if you want to reduce that, the cholesterol is something we can talk about, but I never let my patients check a cholesterol until their hemoglobin A1C is at least in the fives. Yeah, I mean, at least in the fives. You say, wait a minute, their A1C is diabetic. I'm like, yep. And if you're diabetic, there are rules that you can have your doctor prescribe you. But if you're trying to reverse it, the first step is to not look at the noisy thing that's going to happen with cholesterol, because it's going to change a lot in the next 6 months of a ketogenic diet. What we care about is get that average blood sugar into the fives, get it into the 100, 115-ish. And if I can get it around five, my personal goal is to have a hemoglobin A1C of 5 or less. I don't always hit that goal. I'm not perfect. But that's because it has such a profound difference in the impact of what's the risk of heart disease. So I don't check cholesterol until I know that their average blood sugar is controlled. I mean, their A1C is controlled. And then we are looking at other things that allow me to say, well, how long does it take your body to package up the fat, deliver it to the places in the body that need it, and then recycle that particle back to the liver? What is the residency time of a lipoprotein in your body? And that is where the answer, as we move forward into medicine, looking at what I think the next chapter is. Nobody's going to do lipid panels, or only knuckleheads are going to do lipid panels. You're going to want to know what's the length of time it's taking those particles to exit the liver, dish out the fat, and then come back and be recycled. That length of time is what predicts a heart attack. And you cannot understand it by looking at LDL particle or LDL cholesterol in a cholesterol panel. It's not possible. That you're missing half the math.
So
Period.
how do you look at it then? How are you looking
How
at
do
it?
I do it? Yeah, so I first start with A1C, making sure that's there, because don't look at lipids until you get sugars controlled. The second thing I look at is a highly sensitive C-reactive protein, which is that inflammatory marker that kind of looks down the canal of an artery. I want that to be low inflammation. But I'll do that in the setting of something called a nuclear magnetic resonance, which is an NMR, looking at particle number and particle size. I'll tell you, and in fact, I had 15 patients that I was going to review on that show last night, but I only ended up reviewing 3, mine and then 2 people. One who's been on a statin with a PCSK9 inhibitor for 6 months, and how little it changed her risk. And the other gal who is a very, even 10 years older than the other patient, but has reduced her risk of a heart attack to what mine is. But both of our LDL cholesterols are over 200, like so high that every doctor would say, you're going to die. And I'm like,
Right,
no,
right.
no, no. Her calculated risk is much less when we look at that nuclear magnetic resonance. And I would encourage patients to go to Own Your Labs. It's probably the easiest place to go and get this lab done. Cost about $80 to get it done, but I would do it before going to your doctor. Meaning, if you've got your blood sugar control, if you're
Because
on
they're
it,
not going to order it. They typically
right,
aren't
they're
ordering
just
a
gonna fight
Berkeley
it.
Heart Labs,
Mhm.
but when you're talking about the NMR, you're looking at pattern A, pattern B, the lipoprotein size. So we want that large, fluffy cholesterol, not the
Mhm.
small, dense cholesterol. So is there a limit, like when that LDL, if it's pattern A, is there a limit where you're like, hey, this is high enough where I need to intervene with medicine?
So when I'm teaching patients, the pattern A, pattern B, I think has softer rules. The math equation that I like is the LPIR. So it's the
Okay.
lipoprotein insulin resistance score, and it measures number of particles, size of LDL particles, how many tiny particles, what are the size of those tiny LDL particles, what are the size of your HDLs, and how many of those particles are present. And it puts a mathematical value on each of those and condenses it down to a score. It puts you in a percentile. I like to be under the 25th percentile, which is where they stop calculating. If you're at the 50th percentile, there's lots of room to improve, but you can't believe the number that, especially if they're not on if they're on a highly processed food diet, I mean, their numbers are I mean, I'm like, you're a walking heart attack. You got to fix something. You got to do it now. So I really push patients to get that, because there's a few ways you can order those NMRs. And I want you to get the one with the LPIR in it, the insulin resistance score, and it does this math equation. Even if you've already ordered one, you didn't do that, you can Google the LPIR score, and there's a calculator that helps you calculate it. It's really helpful.
Oh my gosh, I'm trying to look up my last one that I had. Right now, I'm like, what was my LPIR? Let me look that up. Yeah, because that's
Oh, I
definitely,
want to know. I want to know. Take time to look at it.
yeah, I know. I gotta find it. But I think you have to find it. Let's see. But so with cholesterol, you're looking at that number, that LPIR. Are you doing CT calcium scores and things like that too?
I find folks do a lot of distraction with that. So it's not that I would never do that, but I have pushed if they've done a coronary artery calcium score, like on their own, they don't need a physician to do one of those. I warn them that 1 in 5 misses the calcium, so be careful to make too much assumption from a coronary artery calcium score only. And I would tell them there are other things you can do that really do impact I mean, what are you doing a coronary artery calcium score for? You're trying to predict, do you have heart disease? How bad is what is my risk? And I would be pushing them to say, body mass index is a better predictor than LDL cholesterol.
Okay.
The LPIR is number one. It is the number one. It's like 6. You can predict a heart disease 6 times better than any other metric on that list, uh, because of how connected that score is with coronary artery disease. So I often find patients and this is true with the thyroid stuff too, they get distracted. Like, oh, I want this number to be right. I want this number to be right. And instead of saying, what was the time the last bite of food went in your mouth yesterday? Focus on that. And if the sun has set, zip your lips, quit eating after dark. You are too old for that. You could do that when you were 15. You cannot do that when you're 50. If you want this body to heal, you've got to zip your lips if the sun is down. And those types of things where focus on the behaviors that change outcomes. And that's where a
Yeah, that's a
community group
powerful
is really
statement
helpful.
too. And so,
Yeah.
and with that said, go through a day, like what does a healthy day look like for you? What is a healthy day and what does keto look like for you?
Well, I told you right before we started that I'm about to be an empty nester. So I'm going to pick a healthy day from the past couple of years. So I'm the mom of 3 sons, and my youngest son, who just graduated, is a state champion in wrestling, which meant we worked out every morning at 5:30. So not every morning, but at least 3 mornings a week. So the days for my morning routine has been, I had a workout partner built into life until just until tomorrow. I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Ah,
And then I have had seasons where I would eat breakfast and I would eat lunch and then I would not eat after that. But as this last few years where son number 3 was our last kid in the house, we would eat after he got done with wrestling practice, which was like at 8 o'clock at night. All right, that's terrible for me. I will put on weight, eating that late. So I had learned that I would have a can of sardines or something in something that I wouldn't need to prepare for in the mid-afternoon. And then I would try to have supper with him at night with a very small volume. Now, it's not been the easiest 3 years. My DEXA scan, where body fat changes, measurement is, well, it's not less, but it's not worse. And it's not sexy. I mean, I can't wait for no more excuses for son. There's no more eating late like that. We have just mom and dad where we
I
don't eat
know when
after
you've
dark.
got sports after
Oh,
school and like for us, it's, the ranch after school,
mhm.
hours there, then, eating dinner sometimes really, really late. It's a challenge.
Oh, it's awful. I mean, the part that I've learned, I built in, at least the last 4 years have been at least once a week. I do a 48-hour plus fast, meaning water, black coffee only. I usually start Sunday after our Sunday meal as a family. I don't eat on Mondays. I have my show on Tuesdays, and I usually eat after the show. So that's about 60 hours, depending on when I started on Sunday. There'll be a few times a year that I push that fast to a 72-hour fast, but I do not fast longer than 72 hours as a rule. So I've learned that because that late night thing was not something I could wiggle over the last few years, I was going to have to do the nothing burger for an extended period of time to keep that weight from popping. And what I've really noticed is that that has been a great teaching tool for me as I, personally check my ketones every morning, my glucose every morning, that if I have something like we go on vacation and I don't fast a week, which is very rare, but when I do that, my blood sugars creep up with it before the next fast comes. So my morning fasting sugars are in the 70s. That's normal, maybe high 60s. And by the end of a week where I haven't fasted, I've just had those late meals, man, those sugars are in the 90s in the morning. And my ketone production will plummet. So what happens each week in my pattern is I still do the workouts. I like that. But when I could do the nothing burger for that 48 to 60 hours, I could churn or plunge my metabolism to produce ketones. I could really give my mitochondria a workout to take some of that fat that's hanging out there that needs to be mobilized and really use that as the fuel source. So by plunging that once a week, it's really worked out well for my at least staying stable. I can say that it's not perfect, but I'm not worse.
That sounds good. Yeah, no, I mean, it's a good policy. So every week you do 48 hours?
Every week. Mm-hmm.
Every week.
Yep, and I do CrossFit that's what the workout was in the morning. I do CrossFit while I'm fasted. I do the sauna while I'm fasted. People say, "Oh, you just can't do it when you're fasting." That's not true. Your body is responsive. Give it the challenge. No, the first time's not going to be easy, but you've just opened up a new layer of, you've just recruited a whole new crop of mitochondria that now are adapted to this layer. And unlike when you're putting on weight, when you are pushing ketones, when you're plunging ketones, you wake up that crop of mitochondria, they don't go back to sleep for several weeks. So you
Yeah.
have that recruitment that is not nearly as hard the second time and the third time and the fourth time. It really does go back to that addiction rules at the beginning. When I know these are the rules that I live by to stay stable, and I'm not trying to keep up with somebody else. I'm not trying to say, oh, I have to be this weight. No, I just need to be in a lane where I can recruit, my metabolism in this healthy zone while balancing the other things that really matter to me, which is, not having my own son end up in an addiction program because his mother was not paying attention. Now that journey of my commitments and balancing that is the rhythm has to be something I can find. So we have a Sunday meal. Everybody knows in my family, I work late on Mondays and I don't eat, and I come home and I get in the sauna, and then I get up in the morning and I go to CrossFit. That's what I do.
And
And
that's awesome.
yeah, that fits for me, and the rhythm is helpful. That becomes that identity. And when I can link to that, even as I head into empty nesting, I can
Yeah, you can
hopefully
definitely hold on to that.
navigate.
So, okay, my LPIR less than 25 is as it reads,
Oh,
less than 25. So
that's
that's good.
perfect. That's great. That's
Um,
the biggest predictor.
and that's with being now 2014, keto on and off, like my 80% keto rule, keto
That's
green,
great.
80% of the time, 10% fasting, 10% feasting. So really believe in those carb up days too, over time. Now, the question, you get a lot of controversy for our athletes, workout fasting, or like say that morning workout, 5:30, 6:30, they're working out hard. Should they be eating within that 45 minutes after that workout?
After the workout, yeah, you can. So let's take the character first of all. So let's take me. I am a 53-year-old woman who has not gone through menopause, that has this nice little layer of fat like most women at 53 do, because I've had children, I've had insulin resistance. When I go to that workout in the morning, the goal for me isn't, I don't want to lose muscle mass. Okay, fine. So I'm using my muscles, but I also am trying to make sure I use some of that fat. So as I stimulate my metabolism before I head off to work, uh, no, I put in black coffee afterwards. I do what it is that's normal and something I like, right? Salted black coffee is what I would have after that workout. My son, who is on the wrestling team, trying to, have strong, lean muscle mass, he doesn't want to put on fat. He wants to put on muscle
Yeah,
mass. So
yeah.
what would he put? What would he do after that workout? He might have some creatine. He might have he eats sardines. He would have a high
It's a
protein, high.
superfood. Sardines are a superfood. In Spain, they are amazing. I had them
Oh, my
on
goal
my
is to go to
Camino only.
Sardinia someday.
Yes, yes. So, but right. And so I think it can vary it up. I think that's we sometimes get stuck into this hard and fast rule
Oh,
where we can vary it up.
I saw this. My son went to an all boys Jesuit school that's very known for academics and sports. And praise God that he was pretty good at both of those. But we were in this place where the sports is this weight dependent power sport. Wrestling, you weigh in. If you weigh too much, you don't get to compete that day. So you have to keep your weight at a certain level. And who wins the match is, I mean, who has the most mitochondria per muscle cell? That's really what they're talking about. As I would coach my son, I mean, he was really good for brand. I mean, we would watch to say, when you've been training and you're looking to say it's 3 rounds, and the third round is where his best wrestling would happen. If they were going to pin Chancellor, my son's name, if they were going to pin him, it was going to happen in the first 30 seconds. As long as he got past the first 30 seconds, that power recruitment is something that, if you are training in a ketogenic state, what are you building? You are building the fat deposits within the muscle cell that then transform that triglyceride into the highest amount of power, even when the glycogen has been depleted. So when you get to those wrestling tournaments, and you would just watch his power grow by the third round, I was so proud of him for it, because he is surrounded by a bunch of other, teenage boys. They do what internet says to do, which is, I need to carb up. I need to have a bunch of, and they would puke and have diarrhea and do all stupid things and then try to lose the weight by weight day. Chancellor never had to do that.
Nice.
And yet at the peak performance, where you're trying to say, can the mitochondria access fuel after glycogen depletion? And that can't happen if you've not been practicing a stress component, which is exercise, in the setting of the fuel being depleted, which is a ketogenic state.
Love it. Love it. Now, one of the things that I've been doing since part of my, we mentioned before I started, my audience, if they've been listening to me for a while, knows I did the Camino de Santiago. I did a 7-day, 150-kilometer hike, and it was probably one of the most transformational experiences of my life. One of the reasons, there were many reasons that I decided to do, and I was really called to do it, but one of it was to celebrate menopause. I said, women don't celebrate this transition of their life, this time period. And so what would celebrating menopause look like for me? And it was that challenge. It was, can I do this? And then to bear witness to women in their 60s, 70s, and beyond doing this walk too. I mean, it was really beautiful, but to celebrate menopause. So when you're thinking, you're not menopausal yet, but thinking like that, what does that look like to you? What do you think about as you prepare for menopause transition and concept?
Wow.
When I say celebrate menopause, how does that feel to you?
Well, first of all, it sounds delightful. I honestly, one of the hardest positions as a young internist was really trying to have honest empathy for women who are going through something that I couldn't understand. And as I embark, I'll tell you, I celebrate every time I have a menstruation, saying, "Oh, not there yet," because I know it's right around the corner. And as I look at all the women who've taught me what the struggle can be if their health isn't optimal through this transition, and how much could be sacrificed without that, the stewardship of having a good body, brain, and soul by the time you're in your 50s. I really learned to appreciate that. Yep, health is something that we can slightly have control over. I think it's more than many people. It's not from my prescriptions, it's from your choices.
Absolutely.
But I really think the women who've taught me the best vision that I have as I go into the next season of my life is that by the time you're in your 50s, you know who you are. At least that's my experience. That I got who God has designed me to be. My relationship with Christ is the strongest it's ever been, and my husband and I have a journey forward that is rooted in being the servants God has asked us to be. And I am so thankful that I'm in a place that my health can allow me to keep doing it. the first, probably 3 or 4 years of trying to help women through menopause, I thought it was this awful torture session. Like, why would God do this? What, it's awful. What, this is terrible. These women are just, it was awful. And through the years, you get better at it, and you really learn to slow down and appreciate that there are the women with the wisdom that just attract you. And you say, wow, I don't care if they're gray hairs or bald. I don't care if they don't have boobs anymore. I don't care if every part of their body sags. That brain has the experience and the wisdom and the centeredness that makes you want to be around them. And that's my beacon. That's what I think of as I want to be the legacy that they have laid in front of me.
I love that. I love that too. And through like experiencing keto green specifically, and I teach you this in Magic Menopause, is that physiology, right, empowers our body and our health. And it doesn't have to, like, menopause is mandatory and natural, but suffering is optional. And so
Amen.
like understanding, like, and the way you radiate health, Annette. So you radiate health. I love what you're doing. I love your mission and your purpose. And please tell our audience where they can get a hold of you, or I'll keep you on for another hour.
That's great. No, you can find the best place to find us is YouTube. We have quite a channel that's been growing there. I do think that I was telling you this earlier. There's a whole bunch of people who've exited Western medicine trying to find our place. And my mission is to stop as many prescriptions as I've started.
Yeah.
And I really think that comes through how can I be the best educator with the knowledge I have and the passion I have for teaching. And we do it in a place where it's free. It's on YouTube. So we have other ways you can support our channel when you get there. But for the most part, come join the tribe. We go live every Tuesday and we try to answer questions, and I talk people through cases and puzzles that I'm thinking through.
I love it. I love it. So it's at Dr. Boz, B-O-Z, so D-R-B-O-Z, on YouTube and on Instagram and social media. And your website, Annette, is?
BozMD.com.
Easy, bozmd.com. So I want to thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your wisdom, and just feel grounded and centered and inspirational. So I thank you. And I think it's so important for us as we continue, like I say, into our second 50, maybe we'll have a third 50, who knows, the second half of our lives or more, hopefully, that we do it with quality. And there's a great proverb that says, when you have your health, you have 1,000 wishes. When you don't have your health, you have just one. And so thinking outside the box, testing, measuring, guiding principles from the physical, but also the mental and the spiritual, how that's such a big part of health in general too. So again, I want to thank you, and I want to thank all our listeners for being here. Please go to Dr. Boz's YouTube channel. Check her out there. Again, Tuesday she is live. And I want to thank you guys for being here. Please share this episode, because there's so many misconceptions about keto and that it can be bad for you and all this stuff. And the numbers don't lie. So paying attention, as a Dr. Boz said, give it time, give your body time, give your thyroid time to catch up. Just give yourself time. I think that's a really important lesson. And remember, it's always one step at a time. So be sure to share this episode and let us know how you liked it. Thank you guys for being here. God bless. Till next time.